Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have friends that like Buffy, share it with them. It all helps the algorithm. The usual spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Buffy at least once, I may talk about things in each episode that relate to future plot points. So if you don't like spoilers, I suggest you subscribe and come back after you've watched it all. Today we are discussing Season 1, Episode 10, Nightmares. Plot summary. Buffy is in the Master's lair. He chokes her. Eek! It's a dream! Buffy, being a delinquent, may have contributed to her parents' divorce. The universe revolves around Cordelia. Wendell opens his book and boom! Surprise tarantulas! Weird Kid apologises. The Master is a good father figure to Colin, which is the stupidest name for a chosen one ever, and teaches him an important lesson on fear. Buffy is worried her dad won't show up. Giles gets lost in the books. Not metaphorically, he literally gets lost in the stacks. Wendell actually loves spiders, but his brother baked his tarantulas into crispy spider biscuits with a heat lamp. Buffy forgot about the history test, doesn't answer a single question. Laura stupidly goes into the basement for a smoke and gets bashed by a monster, muttering "Lucky 19. Snyder did say smoking was unacceptable last episode. Buffy and Giles interview Laura, learn of Coma Kid. Xander is in her underwear, Giles can't read, Buffy's father is a jerk. Ugly Man assaults Buffy and Coma Kid. They end up at a cemetery. Willow is in Madame Butterfly, as lead soprano, doesn't know the words, can't sing a note. Xander is chased by a knife-wielding clown, incredibly cliche but entirely understandable. Xander knocks the clown out. Master buries Buffy alive, Giles finds her grave, eek, Buffy is a vampire! Vamp Buffy kicks Ugly Man's butt, Coma Kid pulls off his mask. There's a baseball coach that beat him for losing the game. Coach goes to jail, Buffy goes on weekend with Dad, Xander still thinks Vamp Buffy is hot. I hadn't seen this episode in quite a while and actually forgot how well done it was. The callbacks to Willow's fear of being on stage last episode worked well as the new fears introduced in this episode, such as Buffy's fear she was responsible for her parents' divorce, or Giles' fear of Buffy's death. Of course, the episode does fall into the scary clown and spiders cliches, but does a good job of putting a spin on those fears. It should also be noted that this episode is another written by David Greenwald, who wrote Teacher's Pet. So clearly he does actually have writing skill. He did go on to create the Angel TV show after all. In the scene where her father is telling her that she is responsible for her parents' divorce and that Hank thinks she's sullen and not very bright, Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting is outstanding, and my heart breaks for her every single time I watch it. Of all the scenes in Buffy, this is the one that's the hardest for me to watch because it's too real and not rooted in the supernatural. I have one major issue with this episode's plot, in that we aren't given any real explanation for why Billy is making people's nightmares become real, other than Hellmouth. Which, like the convenience of the three giving their lives in Angel to get rid of that plot device, is pretty sloppy writing. This also marks our first entirely human monster, and contrasts with the previous episode. There we thought it was a human, but it turned out to be a monster. In this episode, what appears to be a monster is actually human. While what the coach did had supernatural consequences, the coach himself and what he did was just because he is a waste of DNA. And subsequently, once caught, he was turned over to the proper law enforcement and not slain by Buffy. In the opening scene, we get Buffy entering the Master's lair. When she confronts him, fear overtakes her. She drops her stake and is frozen and powerless to act, as he wraps his hand around her neck and then leans in to bite her. Lucky for her, it is a dream. Shortly after, we get a scene with the Master and the Anointed. He says, "Fear is a wonderful thing. It is the most powerful force in the human world. Not love, not hate, fear." He asks the Anointed what he feared as a mortal boy, and the Anointed answers monsters. The Master replies, "We are defined by the things we fear," and says that the cross confounds him, suffuses him with mortal dread, but fear is in the mind. He grabs the cross and burns, as vampires do when they encounter holy items, and says, "Like pain, it can be controlled." Then concludes, "If I can face my fear, it cannot master me." The Master here provides us with the lesson that fear is something we all have, but is something that we often have to overcome in order to move forward. We see a number of the Scooby's fears in this episode. Cordelia's seems rather trivial. Bad hair, bad clothes, being forced to join the chess club. Basically, Cordelia's biggest nightmare is being unpopular, which means in Season 2, when she chooses Xander over being popular, her love is greater than her fear. Cordelia really did love him. Willow's fear continues on from her fear of performing from the last episode, as she is thrust into the role of Chow Chow-san in Madame Butterfly, but doesn't know the words and can't sing a note. It should be noted here that the first lines from the Puccini opera that is sung to Willow is "Girl from whose eyes the witchery is shining," a rather early foreshadowing of the power she will develop. Now, we don't really see any of Willow's other fears. In later episodes we learn that she's scared of frogs, but we see none of that here. What I find particularly interesting from a character perspective is what she's not frightened of, and that's everything to do with her intelligence. For someone who is quite meek and shy and uncertain of herself when we first meet her, to have absolutely no fears or doubts about what is arguably her greatest asset is quite extraordinary. You contrast Willow then with Giles, and Giles is riddled with fear and doubt about his intelligence. He gets lost in the book stacks, he loses his ability to read, which makes him completely ineffectual as a watcher, and is a precursor to the fear that he will fail to prepare Buffy properly for all that she will face, and she will die as a result. We see Buffy's fear about her father, about him not loving her, about the divorce being her fault, which are common fears of children from divorced parents. But in Buffy, these fears are exacerbated by being the Slayer. Buffy feels that her being the Slayer may have been the reason that her parents divorced. We see her fear in facing the Master, that she won't be strong enough, and will just freeze when it comes to the moment. This is a foreshadowing of the season finale, where she is ineffectual against the Master's power and is killed. Buffy also fears being turned into a vampire, but her fear is actually of becoming a monster, something that could easily happen if she just unleashed the Slayer power and effectively ignored her human side. Then we have Xander. First we see that Xander is naked in front of everyone, which is a common fear. It is usually interpreted as fearing that something you wish to remain hidden about yourself will be exposed, or that you fear there is little to you, and you will be exposed as a fraud, trying to be something you're not. Now, Xander's biggest fear is probably turning out like his parents, and he has developed a clown-like persona of telling jokes and always being the funny guy, as a master who is inner turmoil and pain, the personal demons that are his. So it should be no surprise that his biggest fear is an unfunny birthday clown that chased him when he was 6. Most importantly in all of this, Xander is the only one who embraces the Master's lesson when he turns around, confronts his fear, punches the clown and knocks the clown out. Buffy learns the lesson, something she will have to apply in the season finale, and realizes, like Sid in the prior episode stabbing the demon and ending it, that it is something you must do yourself. So she has Billy confront his fear and unmask the ugly man in a very Scooby-Doo fashion, to reveal he is very much a man and not a demon, but definitely a monster. This episode is the first time we see Hank Summers, Buffy's father. And this episode is interesting and rather unique in the Buffy series in its focus on father figures. You'll notice watching these episodes that fathers are notably absent nearly all of Buffy, and when they are present, they tend to be pretty awful. In this episode we get a number of father figures, both good and bad. Hank, the obvious father figure to Buffy, plays both roles here. The neglectful, abusive father who blames his daughter for his divorce and his disappointment at who she is, He also plays the perfect loving father who just happens to be divorced from Joyce. Hank will become a complete absentee father in the future, being off with his secretary in Spain when Joyce dies. We only see him in seasons 1 and 2 of the TV show, though he does get mentioned every now and then. Bad Hank is contrasted with Giles, who plays the more fatherly role, who fears Buffy's death not only for her loss, but as a sign of his failure. Giles' fear of failing Buffy is contrasted with the Master, who here plays a fatherly role to the Anointed, nurturing and instructing him, preparing him for his new life, offering him advice, and teaching him about fear. It is interesting that two of the best father figures that aren't Giles, first the Master to the Anointed, and then Mayor Wilkins to Faith, are our big bads for those respected seasons. Perhaps Joss has something to say that even evil men can be good fathers at times. The other father figures we get here, and one that features prominently in many kids' childhood, is that of the coach. The coach in this episode is the human version of the Tedbot in next season. Someone who appears caring and nurturing, but is actually a monster inside. In terms of the other fathers in the show, Willow's father is completely absent. We never see him. You get fathers or father figures in Buffy that are downright evil, or at least manipulative and controlling, such as the Ted Robot in season 2, or Tara's father in season 5. Xander's own father is an abusive alcoholic prick. Now, some of this may be due to the Joss Whedon's childhood. His father and mother divorced when he was young, and he grew up with his mother in New York, while his father and brothers moved to LA. Joss described his father as distant and not particularly good with kids. So some of the father's issues that abound in Buffy are possibly derived from that. However, some are just necessary. From a plot perspective, it is necessary to have absentee parents, or else they'll notice all the time that their kids are out at night, or getting hurt, or involved in scuffles and that. And for the Scoobies in particular, Giles plays the father role, so actual fathers are mostly unnecessary to advance the plot from episode to episode. When asked about the fathers in a New York Times interview, Hank in particular, Joss said, "It's true that Buffy's father started out as just a divorced dad and then turned into this sort of evil pariah figure of not even bothering to show up. And that was simply because we had a father figure in Giles. And since we're telling stories about family that often hit on the traditional patriarchy as being kind of lame-o, and the created family as being more lasting and more loving, it just made sense." We see another birth year for Buffy on her grave in this episode. It is 1981, which differs from both the years shown in I, Robert You, Jane, but is the canonically correct birth year as per her tombstone in season 5. This episode marks the first and the only time we will ever see Sarah Michelle Gellar in vamp face. There are a number of pop culture references in this episode. The obvious two are Madame Butterfly and Ava Peron, but there are a couple of others too. During Buffy's nightmare of the Master being free, he says, "A dream is a wish your heart makes," which is from the Disney version of Cinderella. And when Billy wakes up, he says, "I had the strangest dream, and you were in it, and you were in it," which is a slight paraphrase of what Dorothy says after waking on her return to Kansas in The Wizard of Oz. My favourite quote from this episode is,
"Wow, the Hellmouth, the center of mystical convergence, supernatural monsters. Been there.
Little blasé there, aren't you?
I'm not worried. If there's something bad out there, we'll find. You'll slay. We'll party."
Thanks for having confidence in me.
You demand, Buff.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this look into the Buffyverse, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you disagree with anything I said or think I missed out anything important from the episode, put it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.